Octopath Traveler had one of the best teasers I've ever seen. It showed a vision for how to refresh the old Square RPG style into a modern context. But it was just a teaser. It didn't guarantee that the actual game would deliver on that vision. Octopath Traveler is stunning on its surface. It's got a great look, a beautiful soundtrack, and fun gameplay. But it has structural problems, especially in its story, that take off some of the shine. It's a game whose quality is divided over the biggest two aspects of any JRPG, the game mechanics and the storytelling. Let's talk about the design of Octopath Traveler through its RPG mechanics and its storytelling, and explore what went right and what went wrong. Octopath Traveler is an RPG dense in game mechanics. It's got tons of equipment, Final Fantasy styled character jobs, SMT style elemental and attack type weaknesses, visible turn orders like Final Fantasy X, and BP, which works a lot like the Brave system in Bravely Default. They all combine to make a very strategic battle experience. The combat is all focused around weaknesses. You'll want to create a team with the right jobs to have a wide range of elemental and physical attack options. Use every type of attack you can to discover an enemy's weaknesses, then use that knowledge to whittle their guard down to 0, which breaks your opponent and forces them to skip some of their turns. This basic strategy works well to take care of normal enemies quickly, but boss fights especially rely on you discovering and targeting weaknesses. The game's bosses are often very resilient, especially if you're a bit underleveled, and they can easily take out one or several of your party members if you're too cavalier about how you fight. The battle system is rich with tactical options and rewards flexibility and adaptation. But there's a problem. If you found the right set of weaknesses and are exploiting them fully, the boss might not get many moves against you. You feel pretty safe, almost like you've solved the puzzle, but the bosses tend to be damage sponges, and you're left fighting for another 10 minutes to take them down. Some people like endurance boss fights like that, but I don't think Octopath's bosses feel like a marathon fight for survival like some of the best long boss fights do. Later boss fights do switch up their weaknesses mid-fight, and that can add a little tension, but it's not complicated to adapt to it, and it doesn't actually change the combat loop much. Even so, the combat of Octopath is very nice, and one of the best parts of the game. Outside of combat, I love the idea of Octopath's out-of-battle actions. Each character in your active party can do something specific, called a path action, to almost every NPC in the game. You can beat them up, charm them into helping you in battle, press them for more information, or just rob them blind. Two of your party members might have the same type of action, but one may have the risky or rogue version, and one may have the less risky noble version of the action. With more risk, you can reap greater rewards, but you can also go too far and alienate everyone in town if, say, you're caught stealing too many times. The range of things your party can do in towns makes your party composition actually important outside of battle. Do you bring your underleveled apothecary? He might not be the strongest member of the team, but he can talk to the townspeople and get some free information. Do you double up your hunter and warrior? They're great in fights, but they both have the same path action type, which forces you to go without some of your options if you're too far from a tavern to swap out party members. There's one easy decision at least: you always want the thief. Sorry Tressa, there's just so much stuff to steal. Merchants? Yoink. Sickly kid? Yoink. Sickly kid's mom? Yoink. That medicine wasn't working anyway. Octopath has wonderful mechanics, even if they're not perfect. The battle system is deep and fun, and the path action system makes your party feel like it's dealing with NPCs in their own personal style. But RPGs aren't all about mechanics. I feel the core of an RPG is the story it tells, and the story of Octopath Traveler could be told better. Oh, and here's your spoiler warning: minor early and mid-game spoilers ahead. Nothing major, you'll be fine. Your characters are traveling through the world of Orstera, which is quite pretty. Unique and interesting biomes are all over the place, and the wilds flow fairly well, from town to town, key location to key location. I should be clear, the physical world is well put together. The societal setup for the world is not. Each location is a pretty standard JRPG town that specializes in one thing, and one thing only. It's even in their name: Cobblestone, Saints Bridge, Noble Court, Boulder Fall, Sunshade, Still Snow, Merchant Port, Forest Zone, I Like Church Sylvania. But the locations aren't tied together very well into a cohesive world. The towns don't seem to interact that much. Even within the same town, you don't feel a strong connection with the rest of the game. When two of the game's chapters happen in the same place, you're not interacting with the same NPCs. You're not dealing with similar or even related goals, and you're going to different locations in and around the area. The chapters might as well be in two different towns. Orstere's locations feel vibrant at first, but that world-building momentum gets tossed aside in every new chapter, and eventually makes the locations feel a bit cookie-cutter. While traveling in Orstera, you'll meet 8 people and take them through 8 different paths, or individual stories. Each character is focused on their own story, traveling from town to town seeking purpose, information, freedom, adventure, or vengeance. On paper it's a good idea. There isn't one main character among the 8 really. Each is equally important. You get to pick what character you start as, and then travel around collecting the others at your own pace. You don't even need to get everyone. But in practice, the freedom of the game's narrative comes at a cost. There is nothing to tie these 8 threads together. Each character is an island unto themselves. Instead of a critical plot thread with a central goal, the game tells 8 equally important story arcs, chopped up and served one part at a time. There are no interweaving plot lines, and worse than that, there pretty much can't be any. Any one chapter can only be sure that you've seen the previous chapter of the same character. It knows nothing about the state of the world or your other party members. They don't even show up in the cutscenes. It's almost like the 8 characters are just in each other's chapters as a favor, like helping them move or something. Let's say you're in the middle of Therion's story. He's a thief and has to steal several powerful artifacts for a wealthy, shady family in order to regain his freedom. In any other RPG, the rest of your party might have something to say about his situation. Cyrus, the world-class mage scholar, might dive into the mysteries of the artifacts. Ulbrich, the steadfast knight, might grouse about the dishonor of their circumstances. But not in Octopath. Everyone else is just hanging around, somewhere off screen while the cutscenes are happening. You'll sometimes get a chance to hear a party member and the starring character talk for a second after a cutscene ends. They might touch on some character moments, but they don't reference events from other characters' chapters, and they never change the course of the current plot. They're nothing but flavor text, and they're easy to miss. If you don't have the right people in your party, or even if you just didn't see the prompt in the top corner of the screen, you'll skip over the scene entirely. It doesn't even have something like the Fire Emblem support conversation system, where the party banter might have told a story that progressed over time. Instead, the dialogue plays the same whether Alphen is still a bright-eyed optimist, or if he's been betrayed a couple of times. Primrose will say the same thing no matter if she's in her chapter 1 or her chapter 4. It's funny, the screen even goes into a weird darkened scene with spotlights when they start talking, kinda like they're in a stage play for a minute. It makes the conversation feel even more detached from the game world. When it's done, the game fades back in and you continue like nothing happened. The characters end up feeling a little static because they are static, left without an arc outside of their personal plot advancement zone. Within each scene, Octopath's writing is passable. JRPGs are notorious for wildly varying story quality, and the content of Octopath's story is certainly not the worst I've ever played. A lot of the character arcs are very standard RPG tropes, but that's fine. Cartoonish villains are thwarted by cartoonish heroes, with an occasional detour to some more nuanced and surprisingly dark chapters. Thanks to the Inquire and scrutinized path actions, there is a ton of backstory you can read about most of the NPCs in the game. They'll all have a little blurb about how they relate to the other people in town. It does help bring the world to life to a certain extent, and some of the side quests make use of it, but the writing can get fairly long-winded. The voice acting is fine. The actors do an okay job with the script they're given, but sometimes that script is the worst, most noticeably with Honnet.
"'Tis not the hunt that concerneth me. Thou intendest to stop and off somewhere along the way."
The voice actress is doing fine, but listening to Honnet's terrible fake old English dialect makes me wince every time. It's too bad. Her storyline is one of the strongest of the group, but it sounds like someone is making up old English on the fly and has no idea what they're doing. For hours.
"Letting the hunt beginneth."
Yeah, that sounds right. Even with some of its script problems, it's the story structure that tarnishes the experience of the game. It paints story arcs into a corner that even a better script couldn't get out of. But the structure is not far from being much more solid. I have a few tweaks that might fix most of the problems I've had with it. Instead of making the chapters completely freeform, force the player to gather everybody. Keep the ability to meet them in any order, but over the course of Chapter 1, pair up characters into 4 set groups. Have those pairs meet another pair over Chapter 2, forming 2 parties of 4 and do 4 mini-chapters. 1 focused on each character in the group. Have everybody meet up over Chapter 3, and in Chapter 4 do the final step in everyone's personal arc. Then fight the main villain. Oh, also, have a main villain, and not one that shows up optionally out of nowhere. Because you can bounce around and pick which chapters to do, you still get some of the feeling of a freeform story structure, but now the writers can really rely on characters knowing about previous events. The group dynamics can develop, interweaving plotlines can appear and affect each other, and character development can happen over the course of the game. The main villain plot can keep the story focused and can let the game's many personal chapters play against an overarching threat. Really, I think adding some more traditional story structure to this freeform concept could have made this game into an instant classic. The game has a gorgeous visual style and very solid battle mechanics. The path action system is an interesting way to tie together its character and world building elements, but Octopath Traveler's uneven writing and its limiting narrative structure bring down the whole experience. I have hope for the next game though. Octopath Traveler is not a complete package, but it's a great proof of concept for how to revive the 16-bit RPG.